All right, let's get into our discussion proper now. The Southwest Zone of the Academic Staff Union of Universities held a protest at the University of Lagos. The striking lecturers from both states and federal universities accused the pro-chancellor of the university, Dr. Wale Babalaki, of meddling in the affairs of the ongoing nationwide strike.
They say his meeting with heads of department and deans of faculties in the school is uncalled for and might hinder the success of the industrial action.
Very early in the life of the council of this university, our union wrote a congratulatory letter stating areas of priority for which we think a responsive and responsible council should attend to as a matter of urgency. Almost 2 years after the assumption of office of the pro-chancellor, he had not deemed it fit to meet representatives of workers on this campus.
He overreached himself. He committed an illegality by inviting deans of faculties and head of department to meet in the Senate chambers. The Senate, we must put on record, is the highest academic organs of the university, and that is where we have professor and elected members, chaired by the vice chancellor, a post chancellor, whatever is calling, particularly the one that is just a politician, has no business to actually thread the Senate, talk less of calling a meeting there.
By the dictate of our struggle, there shouldn't be any of such meeting. But the fact that the pro-chancellor is calling a meeting of Senate members in the Senate chamber is really at variance with the university laws. Because the only person that can call the meeting of Senate is the vice chancellor. So the pro-chancellor is stepping beyond his band to call such a meeting. So that's why we are here, to prevent our members from attending such a meeting.
While TVC Breakfast sought the views of some Lagosians on the lingering ASUU strike, here's what they had to say.
If they are talking about those people affected most about this strike, I think we are the most affected. Because whatever we have left undone now, we will do it when we resume. That means we'll have to carry excess load. On the issue of no work, no pay, we don't see that as a serious matter. Government has always announced no work, no pay. But they have not been able to drive it through because they know it's not possible to implement no work, no pay for academic staff.
No more news, it's not new. Government, you tried it before, they failed or thereabout. Okay, what happens to governors that fail to pay salary of workers as and when due? What happens to them? So, government, I know at the right time, government we learned they've withdrawn such a statement for us in the university system, and I know they won't bring it back again because they know the implication.
The no work, no pay issue has been withdrawn. So it shouldn't solve the problem anyway. If you say no work, no pay, then it will be no pay, no work. That would be a logical conclusion, right? The strike is affecting everybody, students, parents, lecturers. Lecturers want to actually come to school and work. So I think the government should resolve this issue so that everybody will come back to work.
I think it sounds really interesting there. Yeah. I think that the last voice there saying it'll be logical. If there's no work, no pay, then there'll be no pay, no work. I think
exactly why they were striking.
So what is good for the right is also good for the left. All right, we have in the studio public affairs analyst Ayodele Adewale joining us right here. Certainly, it's good to see you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Good morning.
And we have the Assistant Secretary ASUU, that's the Academic Staff Union of Universities, Lagos State University Chapter, Adeolu Oyekon. Thank you very much for coming as well.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. All right, let me start with you, Comrade Adeolu. The ASUU has met with government about 4 times and didn't really come out with any concrete agreement, apart from the last time where the minister just said, yesterday, that they've reached some partial agreement. Can you explain to us, if you have an understanding of what this partial agreement is?
Well, as far as we are concerned, we do not have any agreement with the federal government yet.
Whether partial or absolute?
Partial or absolute, no. The last time we were briefed by the National Strike Coordinating Committee of our union, well, the impression we left with is that we have really not made any progress. You know, if you follow the history of ASUU strikes in Nigeria, you should know that this is a regular pattern. The federal government goes into denial, they pretend as if nothing is happening, then they begin to call meetings, rigmaroling without really making any progress. We are at that stage now. Hopefully they will get their act together more quickly so that we will have concrete, you know, tangible results.
All right, so the statement or the report credited to the Minister of Labour saying that, well, it's likely by Monday the strike will be called off or suspended by ASUU.
But the same minister told Nigerians that the next meeting will be on the 17th of December.
Okay.
So if he says the strike will be called off by Monday,
but how do you mean that no progress has been made when the Labour Minister was quoted to have said that some of the issues that you raised, especially the a shortfall in salaries, according to him, ASUU has given a list to the Accountant General's office, and that it's been looked into, that by Wednesday they will cross-check. Aren't those also relevant to making progress? You want money, but of course the Accountant General's office is already involved.
If people's salaries have been underpaid for no explicable reasons, and then they are demanding that these shortfalls, you know, be remedied, I think it's the responsibility of the federal government, because this affects mostly the federal universities now, to ensure that it gets its acts right. So if the papers are still going through the various offices in the Accountant General's office and all of that, well, good luck to them. What our members want is to have the shortfall in their salaries paid.
So you're saying that this strike is not likely to be called off before 17th of December, when the meeting has been adjourned to?
As at this morning, it doesn't look as if it will be called off.
Okay.
If we have any information of that effect, the national leadership will communicate.
All right. We'll look at all of that. Let's bring in Ayodele Adewale in here. I know you've been following this face-off between the federal government and ASUU over the past month and all of that. A lot of people have said that government, on one hand, may not be very sincere after they agreed to the memorandum of action and then didn't follow up to it, even up until now.
Well, I'll beg to disagree with that.
Okay.
I think the problem on ground is having adequate resources to put into different sectors in the country. The government of today have come to inherit a lot of monumental, I want to use the word disappointment, by successive government at the center to try to ameliorate the problems in this country. But I will encourage the government that if you intend to solve all the problems in Nigeria, then you have to invest massively in education. Because if you don't educate your citizenry very well, it becomes difficult to push forward with developmental efforts that they are putting in place.
Yeah, but as at 2017, that is about 2 years into the administration of this government, and one would expect that they already understand the challenges, whether there has been a shortfall over the past, in fact, since independence, they already have an understanding. Meanwhile, going into an agreement in 2017 with ASUU, they would have really known the challenges they have and what they can achieve, and at least acting by or standing by their own commitment as at 2017 shouldn't be a big issue, a big deal.
It will always be a big deal when you don't have abundance of resources coming in.
Oh, it means government didn't know.
Government will always have expectation to resource. But again,
it means government didn't know.
Government will always have expectation to resource. But again, government does not control the international market, particularly as it concerns some of the commodities that we have that bring in resources to us and all of that. And especially when you still have crisis in some corners of the country.
All right, so was it a mistake to have signed an agreement or memorandum?
It's not a mistake, it's a projection. It's not a mistake, it's a projection. For government to have signed an agreement, they meant well. If I sign an agreement with 100 people that have 100 peculiar problems that we intend to solve, and we have very few multiple strings of drawing resources from, and some of these strings are having challenges. The best I could do is to call them back to the table. That look, I mean to pay you at X amount of time, but with the challenges before us, particularly as it concerns infrastructural provision, because if you don't have much infrastructure in place, you can't generate revenue.
You know, there are some who would say, why reach an agreement in the first place if you do not have, you know, a comprehensive plan in keeping that agreement? ASUU, the union, the Polytechnic Union, is also on strike now. It's amazing to know that they had also reached an agreement with the federal government 2009 and had another memorandum of action in 2017. This is not an agreement that was made yesterday or the day before. Are you saying in close to a decade, Nigeria as a country haven't been able to gather as much resources to resolve these issues? You
must appreciate that this government was there in 2009.
But government is a continuous.
It's a continuous.
It doesn't matter who was there in 2009.
It's a continuous.
The federal government
but you have people
and a union.
You have people who are going to control the instrument of power. As I stand fully with ASUU any day. I stand that education must be free, must be compulsory for everybody, and must be qualitative. You understand? But again, we must face social realities. And that's why I keep commending the government of Ogbeni Rauf Aregbesola. He faced similar issues, you understand? One thing I have to bend for one. But that does not mean that you must not pay your workers. Your workers must be well paid. Yeah. But again, there are contemporary economic, social issues that confront us.
It is good you mentioned Rauf Aregbesola in the situation in Osun. We were in Osun sometime, and we understand how the government decided to sit down with members of the civil service and all of that to say, okay, these are the peculiar issues we have. Let's come into an agreement and all of that. And they agreed on a modulated salary arrangement and all of that. Government was happy, civil servants were happy, even though the monies weren't coming as, but everybody was happy because they were on board. In this situation, would you say the government has engaged appropriately with the unions?
The government must continue to engage. And the union also must come out with some solutions. Government alone might not be able to provide the solution as the union will want. But again, government must be able to show them the realities, that this is the income of the country. And what we feel should predate all of these issues is for us to provide sources that will bring in more revenue, and that is infrastructure. And that means that government must take account for infrastructures in the academia. If I am president today, you understand, one thing I'll take as my key priority is education. Infrastructure in the academia, to the extent that it will create a revolving stream that will also provide for solution to those problems.
That indeed is moving forward. The challenge right now is what we have done about the backlog that has existed in the past decade. Let me bring Mr. Oyekon in here. In the past 15 years or 18 years thereabouts, since 1999, ASUU has gone on strike no less than 15 times, a cumulative of over 3 years. The current strike has gone past 1 month now. And then some are saying that critical to the quality of education is also all of these gaps. 3 years that ivory towers have been shut down. And it's like a situation of doing the same thing the same way and expecting a different result. We read the news this morning about the NLC saying that, well, for governors who have refused to pay or who are not willing to pay, they're going to start shaming them the moment they travel out of the country. Are there no alternatives? Because if we have been going on strike on the same issue in the past 10 years, and we are still going on strike in 2018, it appears there are no fresh ideas that are being put on the table.
I've listened to so many analysts throwing this into the court of ASUU, and I find it a bit amusing. So you see, the problem we have here is that leadership in this country is psychologically wired to respond to force, to threat. It's as if we have people coming into leadership who are averse to dialogue, to reasoning. The first question...
Well, that's what I'm saying, that perception is also not accurate, given the experience we've had in the past 10 years. If leadership only responds to force, how come leadership hasn't responded to your strike action that you have gone for over 3 years? That's the question.
They have been responding haphazardly. You remember we had the 2009 agreement, which relatively brought about some improvements in remuneration and workplace conditions. But even President Yar'Adua at the time acknowledged that Nigeria was still, far behind so many other African countries in terms of where we ought to be. And then he said, okay, we will scale this up over a period of time. Just let us do it gradually. And we said, fine. So we revisited this in 2012, and that was what led to the agreement signed with President Jonathan late in 2013. And then you will recall that we said that at that critical point in time, we would need about 1.2 trillion naira to revive the education, the tertiary education, the university system in Nigeria. That's right. And government said no, the figure is too high. So they went out on their own and came back and said, oh, we will actually need 1.3 trillion. ASUU didn't capture all the needs.
The needs assessment.
And so we said, okay, let's do this over 6 years. There are other competing needs we understand. But if you do 220 billion in 5-6 years, we should be home and dry. President Jonathan did 200 billion first tranche. President Buhari came in. Nothing has happened. So I think this goes beyond the president and the present government not having enough resources. The first question you should ask yourself is, what is the program of this government for education? Primary, secondary, tertiary. Have you heard the president or the vice president or the minister of education say, this is our mission statement, this is what we want to run with in 5 years' time, this is where we think education should be in Nigeria? There is no plan on ground at all. And that is the big tragedy. Well, people may talk about, challenges with resources and all of that, and to some extent we may say, okay, we understand what the situation is, but you need to see a goal, you need to see some sincerity, and that, unfortunately, is lacking with the present government.
Yes, Adolo, the point there is, we are all here when we were talking. In fact, we were in recession in 2016, and we just fragilely, we just got out. And getting out of recession, we're still, in fact, international organization and even all the economists are saying the way we are, even though we are out of recession, but the figures are still very fragile. Now, it brings us to the realities that Ayodele was talking about earlier on. The realities on ground right now is that so many demands on government, but the resources to handle all of them may not necessarily be available. These realities are what some people will say, well, ASUU may not be facing the realities on ground. What is your take on the issue of facing the realities on ground?
Well, the belief of ASUU is that this country has enough resources to take care of education if we understand the importance of that sector to any developmental agenda any government may be genuinely pursuing. If people sit in places earning 13.5 million naira a month, you have a country of aides in offices, government budgeting hundreds of millions for utensils in ASUU work every year, and you say that we do not have enough resources to educate our children in this country. ASUU does not believe that is the truth.
Okay, so is the argument in comparison to that aspect of things to say, okay, because maybe government officials are entitled to this and that, so we should have this for ourselves as well? Is the argument from that window?
It is not about ASUU.
Okay.
You see, most of our members are people who, if they go out of this country, will still do fine. We witnessed the brain drain in the 90s. People are still going to South Africa, going to Botswana, going to Zimbabwe, where things are relatively stable, and they are getting paid. They are doing fine. You see, the average Nigerian academic, once you have your PhD, you will survive, especially if you know your onions. So it is not about our people alone, per se. It's about the nation. Because we've lost the primary education system, we've lost the secondary school education system. If we lose this again, this country is going nowhere.
I'm wondering what kind of commitment ASUU is hoping to get from federal government this time. Because what we've seen transpired in the past is federal government promises and then ASUU suspends the strike. Are we looking at a situation where you would not leave the strike until all your needs are met? Because the moment you call off the strike, hoping that a memorandum of understanding has again been reached. I don't know what you would call it this time because it has evolved from understanding to action.
They invented the new one.
Okay. Or maybe we might have memorandum of implementation.
What is ASUU's decision in this particular strike?
Well, we have presented a list of demands, 7 of them, the core ones, and then we are hoping that the federal government will commit itself to doing this. Some of them actually really don't have.
What you want is commitment, not implementation.
Implementation is what shows commitment.
Okay.
If you call it a memorandum of implementation, memorandum of action, and we are not seeing action in the tangible sense of it, then you have really done nothing.
Let's bring Mr. Adewale into this conversation very quickly. There is a fallout of the ongoing strike, and there are people who are concerned about the pre-election year and the fact that there are so many young people at home right now who could be vulnerable, who could be used as political thugs, who could be, tools in the hands of, very evil politicians at such a time like this. Do you think this is critical as to both parties reaching a compromise soon?
Well, if I am to advise ASUU, while I was in school as a student union activist, we normally sit down to look at issues and profile problems, especially when Professor Baka Momo was alive. I mean, those are realists. I would have wanted ASUU to be a shadow government. Take sector by sector. What are these problems? Let ASUU also help government to profile solutions to it and all of that. Because people want to label ASUU as being an economic detractor, which they are not. Perhaps the time is not auspicious enough. People will say, why is it close to elections? Understanding that some of these questions you have raised are going to be the fallout of this trade fight and all of that. But I would want ASUU to take a leap forward. We've been having strikes even as far back as I can remember. You understand? There was a strike around 78 or this 76 where there was a decrease in food and students had to go on strike and all of that. And some students were killed. Ali Mongo, you understand? And these strikes are changing nomenclature now to infrastructure, to lack of infrastructure, now to lack of payment of salaries and all of that. Look at where they started from the reduction of food. And it's going out of way. So I think ASUU should act as a shadow government to try to assist government. Oh, these are the areas where we feel you can do better, put up a template, particularly in the oil sector. We have a lot of chemical engineers in Nigeria. If they are telling us that refineries can't work publicly, then ASUU should provide solutions. If you can solve that problem, the money that we are putting into subsidy be brought to education. Look into the health sector also. How do we manage the health sector? How do we make people accountable for their jobs?
How do you subscribe to the ideology that ASUU should not suspend the strike until federal government implements?
I subscribe to ASUU sticking by their gun, but also creating alternative for government to work, because we are all in this enterprise together. We are all Nigerians.
All right, we look forward to how things will play out in the coming days, coming weeks, and we hope it doesn't stay so long.
Everyone is going on strike right now.
Yeah, everyone is threatening to go on strike. We see the Nigerian Labour Congress threatening. Well, the point there is we're still looking at how things are going to play out with the minimum wage and all of that. Ayodele Adewale, thank you for coming on the program.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And Comrade Adeolu Oyekon, the Assistant Secretary of ASUU in LASU. Thank you very much for coming as well.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
We wish you the best in your struggle.
Thank you. Thank you.